The distress signal cut through the void of space like a knife through silk. It traveled for weeks across the dark emptiness between stars, carrying with it the desperate plea of a dying civilization. The message was simple, transmitted on every frequency the Zilani could manage. Help us. Please. Anyone who receives this, we are dying. Our world is under attack. We cannot defend ourselves. Please help. Commander Sarah Chun stood in the communications center of the Earth Defense Station, her dark eyes scanning the translated message for the third time. Around her, technicians worked frantically to decode more details from the alien transmission. The room buzzed with quiet efficiency, but Sarah could feel the tension in the air. "Ma'am, we've got more incoming data," called out Lieutenant Rodriguez from his station. "The signal is coming from the Kepler 442 system. That's about 1,200 light-years from here." Sarah nodded, her mind already working through the implications. 1,200 light-years meant this message was old. Very old. Whatever was happening to these aliens might already be over by the time any help could arrive. "What else do we know about them?" she asked, moving to look over Rodriguez's shoulder at the data streaming across his screens. "They call themselves the Zilani, ma'am. From what we can piece together from their transmissions, they're a peaceful species. No military to speak of. Their attackers seem to be something called the Vorth Empire." Dr. Marcus Webb, the station's xenobiologist, looked up from his own console. "Commander, I've been analyzing their biological data. These Zilani, they're herbivores. Their entire civilization seems built around agriculture and art. No weapons, no military technology. They're completely defenseless." Sarah felt a cold anger building in her chest. She had seen enough war in her 30 years of military service to know what happened to peaceful species when predators found them. "What about the Vorth?" "That's where it gets interesting," Webb continued. "From the scattered data in the Zilani transmissions, the Vorth are conquerors. They sweep through systems, enslaving or destroying any species they find. They've apparently been expanding their empire for centuries. And now they've found these peaceful farmers," Sarah muttered. She turned to face the room. "How long would it take us to get there?" The question hung in the air for a moment before Chief Engineer Thompson spoke up from the back of the room. "With our fastest ships using the new quantum drive system? About 4 months, ma'am." "For months." Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, thinking. The message was already old when it reached them. For more months might mean arriving to find nothing but empty worlds and scattered debris. "Ma'am," Rodriguez called out again. "We're receiving another transmission. This one's different." Sarah hurried back to his station. The new message was shorter, more desperate. As the translation appeared on the screen, Sarah's hands clenched into fists. "They're in our cities now. Our children are screaming. We cannot fight them. We do not know how to fight them. If anyone receives this, please remember us. Remember that the Zilani tried to live in peace." The communications center fell silent except for the quiet humming of machinery. Sarah stared at the words on the screen, feeling the weight of decision settling on her shoulders. Earth had only recently developed faster-than-light travel. They were still exploring their own local stellar neighborhood. A mission to Kepler 442 would be their longest journey yet, with no guarantee of what they would find. But these were innocent people crying out for help. "Rodriguez, patch me through to Earth Command," Sarah said quietly. "Yes, ma'am." The holographic display flickered to life, showing the weathered face of Admiral Harrison, Supreme Commander of Earth Defense Forces. His expression was serious as he looked at Sarah's image. "Commander Chun, I assume this is about the alien distress signal we've been monitoring." "Yes, sir. I'm requesting permission to organize a rescue mission to the Kepler 442 system." Harrison was quiet for a long moment. "Sarah, you know the risks. We're talking about a journey into completely unknown space. We don't know what we'll find when we get there. These Vorth could have technology far beyond ours. Sir, with respect, we can't just ignore this. These people are dying. These aliens," Harrison corrected gently. "We don't know anything about them beyond what they've told us." Sarah felt her jaw tighten. "Sir, if someone was attacking Earth, wouldn't we want the galaxy to help us?" Harrison studied her face for a moment, then sighed. "What are you proposing?" "A small fleet. Fast ships with our best crews. We go in, assess the situation, and, if possible, help evacuate survivors or provide assistance. And if these Vorth prove hostile to us..." Sarah met his gaze steadily. Then, we show them why attacking innocent people is a bad idea. Harrison was quiet for nearly a minute, his fingers drumming against his desk. Finally, he nodded. You have authorization for a limited mission. 3 ships maximum. Volunteer crews only. And Sarah? Yes, sir. Don't start a war we can't finish. The connection ended, leaving Sarah alone with her thoughts. 3 ships. It wasn't much, but it would have to be enough. Over the next 2 weeks, Sarah assembled her fleet. The flagship would be the UES Retribution, a heavy cruiser equipped with the latest human weapons and defense systems. Joining her would be the UES Phoenix, a fast attack ship designed for hit-and-run tactics, and the UES Sanctuary, a medical vessel converted for refugee transport. Finding volunteers wasn't difficult. Word of the alien distress signal had spread through the Earth Defense Forces, and hundreds of personnel requested assignment to the mission. Sarah chose carefully, selecting experienced crews who understood they might be flying into a war zone. Captain Jake Morrison would command the Phoenix. Sarah had served with him during the Mars Rebellion and trusted his tactical judgment completely. Dr. Elena Vasquez would lead the medical teams aboard the Sanctuary, bringing her expertise in emergency medicine and trauma surgery. As the 3 ships prepared for departure, Sarah stood in the observation deck of the Retribution, looking out at Earth hanging in the darkness beyond. Blue and white and beautiful, still recovering from the environmental damage of the previous century, but healing steadily under humanity's careful stewardship. Second thoughts, Commander? Sarah turned to find her executive officer, Commander David Park, standing behind her. David had been her second-in-command for 3 years now, and she trusted his judgment as much as anyone's. No second thoughts, she said. Just hoping we're not too late. David moved to stand beside her. These Zilani, they really are completely peaceful? From everything we can tell. No military, no weapons technology. They've never fought a war because they've never needed to. Must be nice, David said quietly. Sarah nodded. Earth's history was written in blood and fire. Humanity had learned to fight because they'd had no choice. Thousands of years of warfare had taught them every lesson about combat, strategy, and survival. Sometimes Sarah wondered what their species might have become if they'd never needed to learn those lessons. But, right now, those lessons might be the only thing standing between the Zilani and extinction. All ships report ready for departure, ma'am, came the voice of Lieutenant Commander Hayes over the intercom. Sarah took one last look at Earth, then turned toward the bridge. Then, let's go save some aliens. The journey to Kepler 442 was long and tense. The 3 Earth ships traveled in formation, their quantum drives pushing them through space faster than anything humanity had ever built before. During the voyage, Sarah spent her time studying everything they knew about the Zilani and their attackers. The Zilani were a fascinating species. They stood about 7 feet tall on average, with slender builds and, for arms that ended in delicate, multi-jointed hands perfect for their agricultural work. Their cities were living things, grown rather than built, with buildings shaped from massive trees and organic materials. They had developed advanced biotechnology but had never seen the need for weapons or military equipment. The Vorth were their complete opposite, a species of conquerors who had built their civilization on the conquest and subjugation of others. They were shorter than the Zilani but much more heavily built, with natural armor plating and claws designed for combat. Their technology was focused entirely on warfare and control. Commander, we're receiving long-range sensor data from the target system, reported Lieutenant Hayes as they neared their destination. Sarah hurried to the sensor station, her heart sinking as she looked at the readings. How many ships? At least 40 Vorth vessels in orbit around the Zilani homeworld. And, ma'am, we're detecting massive energy signatures from the planet's surface. It looks like they're bombarding population centers. Sarah closed her eyes, feeling the familiar cold rage building inside her. They had come 1,200 light-years to find genocide in progress. All ships, reduce speed to minimal power, she ordered. We need to get closer without being detected. The 3 Earth ships crept toward the edge of the system, their advanced stealth systems hiding them from Vorth sensors. As they got closer, the scope of the destruction became clear. The beautiful living cities of the Zilani were burning. Massive Vorth warships hung in orbit like vultures, methodically destroying everything below them. "Ma'am, I'm detecting survivors," reported Hayes. "Large groups of them in underground shelters, but the Vorth are systematically hunting them down." Sarah studied the tactical display, her mind racing through possibilities. 40 ships against 3. The odds were terrible, but that had never stopped humanity before. "Open a channel to all ships," she said quietly. The faces of Captain Morrison and Dr. Vasquez appeared on her screen, along with their senior officers. Sarah looked at each of them in turn, seeing her own determination reflected in their eyes. "Ladies and gentlemen, we came here to help innocent people who couldn't help themselves. Below us, genocide is taking place. 40 enemy ships are methodically murdering an entire species whose only crime was being too peaceful to defend themselves." She paused, letting that sink in. "I won't lie to you about the odds. We're outnumbered more than 10 to 1. The smart play would be to gather intelligence and go home to request reinforcements. But by the time we get back, there won't be anyone left to save." Morrison leaned forward. "What are you proposing, Commander?" Sarah smiled grimly. "I'm proposing we show these Vorth something they've probably never seen before. A species that fights back." The channel fell silent for a moment. Then Dr. Vasquez spoke up. "Commander, I have medical teams standing by. If we can create an opening, we can start evacuating survivors. And I've got a ship full of Marines who are itching to introduce these Vorth to some Earth hospitality," Morrison added. Sarah felt a surge of pride in her crews. This was why she loved serving with humans. When faced with impossible odds and the right cause, they didn't hesitate. "All right then," she said. "Let's go start a fight." The Vorth War Master Grexhai stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the final stages of another conquest unfold below him. Through the massive viewport, he could see the burning cities of the Zalani homeworld. Another species broken, another world claimed for the Empire. "War Master," called his tactical officer. "The ground teams report they have cornered the last major group of survivors in the northern continent underground shelters." Grexhai nodded with satisfaction. The Zalani had been pathetically easy to conquer. No military, no weapons, no resistance worth mentioning. Just farmers and artists who had surrendered almost immediately when his fleet arrived. It had been almost boring. "How many are left?" he asked. "Approximately 50,000, sir, hidden in their underground growing chambers." "Flood the chambers," Grexhai ordered casually. "We have what we need from this world." The Vorth Empire had been expanding for over 3 centuries, and they had developed their conquest procedures to a science. First, orbital bombardment to destroy any defenses and break the will to fight. Then, ground forces to secure valuable resources and technology. Finally, elimination of the native population to make room for Vorth colonists. The Zalani had followed the pattern perfectly. They had offered no resistance, pleaded for mercy, even tried to surrender valuable biotechnology in exchange for their lives. It made no difference. The Empire needed their world, not its inhabitants. "War Master, we're detecting an anomaly on long-range sensors." Grexhai turned toward his sensor officer with mild interest. "What kind of anomaly?" 3 unknown ships approaching from the outer system. They're using some kind of stealth technology I've never seen before. "Reinforcements for the Zalani?" Grexhai laughed. "Impossible. Our intelligence indicated this species had no allies. The ships don't match any known Zalani designs, sir. The energy signatures are completely different." Grexhai frowned. In 3 centuries of conquest, the Empire had encountered dozens of spacefaring species. Most were quickly conquered or absorbed. A few had proven troublesome enough to require extermination. None had ever surprised them. "Are they military vessels?" "Difficult to tell, sir. They're heavily armed, but much smaller than our ships. The largest is maybe half the size of our destroyers." 3 ships. Grexhai shook his head in amusement. "Signal them to identify themselves and state their business." The communication went out, broadcasting on all standard frequencies. For several minutes, there was no response. Then, a voice crackled over the bridge speakers, speaking an accented but understandable Galactic standard. "This is Commander Sarah Chun of the United Earth Ships Retribution, Phoenix, and Sanctuary. You will cease your attack on the Zalani immediately and withdraw from this system." The bridge fell silent. Grexhai stared at the communication console in amazement. In 3 centuries, no one had ever given the Vorth Empire orders. Earth, he said slowly. I've never heard of this species. His intelligence officer quickly accessed the Empire's databases. No record of them, sir. They're not in any of our charts. Where did they come from? Analyzing their approach vector, they came from the direction of an unexplored spiral arm. Very remote region. Grexhai was genuinely curious now. A completely unknown species, traveling from uncharted space, making demands of the Empire. It was unprecedented. Send them our standard response, he ordered. The message went out immediately. Unknown vessels, you are interfering with lawful Imperial operations. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed. The response came back within seconds, and the tone made Grexhai's blood run cold. No, just that single word, delivered with complete certainty and no trace of fear. Grexhai had heard that tone before, from the few species that had chosen to fight rather than surrender. Most had been extinct within days. Sir, they're moving into attack formation, reported the tactical officer. Grexhai watched the display with interest. 3 tiny ships against 40 Vorth warships. The mathematics were absurd. Perhaps these humans simply didn't understand what they were facing. All ships, defensive positions, he ordered. Let's teach these newcomers about Imperial power. The Vorth fleet began to turn toward the approaching Earth ships, their massive weapon systems coming online. 40 vessels with enough firepower to glass a planet, arraying themselves against 3 unknown craft. Sir, the lead ship is hailing us again. Put them through. The voice was the same one as before, calm and steady. This is your final warning. Withdraw from this system, or we will remove you. Grexhai couldn't help but laugh. Unknown commander, you face the might of the Vorth Empire. 40 warships stand between you and this world. Surrender now, and you will be granted the honor of serving the Empire. There was a pause before the human responded. When she spoke again, there was something different in her voice. Something that made the veterans on Grexhai's bridge shift uncomfortably. 40 ships, the human said quietly. You know what? That's not nearly enough. The connection cut. Sir, they're accelerating toward us at maximum speed. Grexhai frowned. This was not how conquered species behaved. Fear, desperation, last-minute attempts at negotiation, those were normal. But this calm confidence in the face of impossible odds was something new. All ships, open fire as soon as they enter weapons range, he ordered. The Earth ships came on like missiles, their smaller size allowing them to accelerate far faster than the massive Vorth vessels. As they closed the distance, the first Vorth ships opened fire with their heavy plasma cannons. The space between the fleets lit up with energy bolts and missile trails. The human ships twisted and dodged through the barrage with impossible agility, their movements coordinated like a hunting pack. Sir, they're not taking any hits, reported the tactical officer, his voice tight with confusion. Grexhai watched in amazement as the 3 Earth ships danced through weapons fire that should have vaporized them instantly. Their evasion patterns were unlike anything he had ever seen, as if they could predict exactly where each shot would go. What kind of defensive systems are they using? I don't understand it, sir. They're not using shields or armor plating. They're just not being where our weapons hit. The lead Earth ship, the one called Retribution, suddenly broke off from its companions and dove straight toward the center of the Vorth formation. Plasma bolts converged on it from a dozen directions, but somehow it slipped between them all. All ships, concentrate fire on the leader, Grexhai ordered. 20 Vorth warships turned their guns on the single Earth vessel. The volume of fire was incredible, enough to destroy a battlecruiser in seconds. The human ship vanished behind a wall of energy. When the bombardment cleared, the ship was still there, still moving, still intact. Impossible, breathed the tactical officer. The Retribution had come close enough now for its own weapons to reach the Vorth ships. When it opened fire, Grexhai understood that they had made a terrible mistake. The human weapons were unlike anything in the Empire's experience. Instead of energy beams or plasma bolts, they fired solid projectiles at incredible velocity. The rounds punched through Vorth armor like it was paper, tearing massive holes in the hulls of 2 destroyers. Sir, the Claw of Vorth and the Empire's might are reporting critical damage. They're losing atmosphere. How is that possible? Those ships have the finest armor in the galaxy. The human weapons aren't using energy, sir. They're firing metal slugs at near-light speed. Our armor was never designed to stop kinetic impact at those velocities. The second Earth ship, the Phoenix, had circled around the Vorth formation and was now attacking from behind. It moved like its namesake, striking fast and hard before disappearing back into the void. Each attack run left another Vorth ship damaged or destroyed. Sir, we've lost 6 ships in 2 minutes, reported the tactical officer, his voice beginning to show panic. Grexhai stared at the tactical display in shock. 6 ships. Elite Vorth warships with centuries of combat experience, destroyed by 3 small craft from an unknown species. It was impossible, but it was happening. How are they moving like that? I don't know, sir. They're pulling acceleration that should crush any organic crew, but they show no signs of slowing down. The third Earth ship, the Sanctuary, had seemed to hang back from the battle. But now Grexhai realized it wasn't avoiding the fight. It was heading for the planet. While his fleet was engaged with the other 2 ships, the medical vessel was diving toward the Zalani homeworld. Stop that ship, he ordered. Don't let them reach the planet. 8 Vorth ships broke off from the main battle to intercept the Sanctuary. But as they moved to block its path, the other 2 Earth ships struck like wolves defending their pack. The retribution came out of nowhere, its kinetic weapons tearing through the formation of intercepting ships. The Phoenix hit them from another angle, its missiles finding weak points in Vorth armor with impossible precision. In moments, 5 more Vorth ships were drifting hulks. Sir, we've lost half our fleet, the tactical officer reported, his voice barely above a whisper. Grexhai couldn't believe what he was seeing. 30 years of commanding Imperial fleets, and he had never experienced anything like this. The humans fought with a combination of precision, aggression, and tactical brilliance that was completely alien to Vorth military doctrine. Where did they learn to fight like this? He demanded. His intelligence officer had been frantically accessing every database he could reach. Sir, I'm picking up fragmentary data from their communications. This species, they've been at war for their entire recorded history. What do you mean? They fought each other for thousands of years, sir. They have words for dozens of different types of warfare. They've developed strategies and tactics we don't even have names for. Grexhai felt a chill run down his spine. The Vorth Empire had conquered dozens of species, but they had always relied on superior technology and numbers. They had never faced an enemy that had been bred by millennia of constant warfare. Sir, the Sanctuary has reached the planet, reported another officer. It's deploying some kind of atmospheric shuttles. Shoot them down. We can't get a clear shot, sir. The other 2 ships are using our own vessels as cover. They're hurting us like prey animals. That was exactly what they were doing, Grexhai realized with growing horror. The humans weren't just fighting his fleet, they were controlling it, manipulating his ship's positions to protect their own medical vessel. Sir, the ground teams are reporting massive explosions near the underground shelters. The humans are using some kind of drilling charges to blast evacuation routes. Send all available troops to stop them. Sir, our ground forces are, sir, they're dead. All of them. Grexhai turned in shock. What? The humans deployed ground forces from their ships. Small teams, maybe 50 soldiers total. They've eliminated our entire occupation force in less than an hour. The tactical display showed the nightmare unfolding in real time. The human ground teams moved through Vorth positions like death itself, using tactics and equipment that seemed almost magical in their effectiveness. How many troops did we have on the surface? 10,000, sir. 50 humans had destroyed 10,000 Vorth soldiers. The numbers didn't make sense, but the evidence was undeniable. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the human commander again. Grexhai almost didn't want to hear it, but he nodded for the communication to come through. War Master Grexhai, the human woman's voice was calm and professional, as if she wasn't in the middle of destroying an entire Imperial fleet. I'm going to give you one more chance. Withdraw your remaining ships from this system. Leave the Zalani in peace. Never return. You're outnumbered, Grexhai said, trying to keep the desperation out of his voice. We still have more ships. No, the human replied simply. You have more targets. As if to prove her point, the Phoenix materialized out of nowhere and put a missile through the bridge of another Vorth destroyer. The ship went dead in space, its command crew eliminated in an instant. "Sir," the tactical officer whispered, "we've lost 23 ships. The humans haven't taken any significant damage." 23 ships. More than half his fleet, destroyed by 3 small vessels. Grexhai stared at the tactical display, watching as his mighty Imperial fleet was methodically dismantled by an enemy he had never heard of until an hour ago. "Who are these humans?" he asked quietly. The intelligence officer looked up from his console, his face pale. "Sir, I've been analyzing their tactical patterns. They're not just warriors. They're predators. Their entire species evolved from something that hunted other creatures for survival. We evolved the same way." "No, sir, we didn't. We were scavengers who learned to fight. They were killers who learned to think." The difference was becoming terrifyingly clear. The Vorth had built an empire through superior technology and ruthless application of force. But they had never faced an enemy that understood violence the way these humans did. "War Master," came another voice from the communication system. "This is Dr. Elena Vasquez of the medical ship Sanctuary. We are evacuating Zalani survivors from the planet's surface. Any attempt to interfere will result in the complete destruction of your fleet." It wasn't a threat. It was a simple statement of fact, delivered with the same certainty as a weather report. "Sir, what are your orders?" asked the tactical officer. Grexhai looked at the tactical display one more time. 17 ships left out of 40. An unknown enemy that fought like demons and showed no mercy. A species that treated impossible odds as a minor inconvenience. For the first time in his military career, War Master Grexhai gave the order he had never thought he would speak. "All ships, withdraw from the system." Commander Sarah Chun stood in the cargo bay of the UES Sanctuary, watching as another group of Zalani refugees was brought aboard. The tall, elegant beings moved with careful dignity despite their obvious trauma, their 4 arms clutching personal possessions and helping wounded companions. "How many so far?" she asked Dr. Vasquez, who was coordinating the evacuation efforts. 43,000 confirmed survivors, Elena replied, her voice hoarse from exhaustion. "We're still finding more in the deeper shelter systems. These people built their bunkers well." Sarah nodded, feeling a mix of relief and rage. Relief that so many had survived the Vorth attack, rage that they had needed to endure it at all. Around them, human medical teams worked alongside Zalani healers, the language barriers overcome by the universal nature of compassion. A young Zalani approached them hesitantly. She was smaller than most of her people, with the pale green skin tone that indicated youth among their species. Her upper pair of arms held a small creature that looked like a cross between a cat and a butterfly, while her lower arms supported an elderly Zalani who leaned heavily on her. "Excuse me," the young Zalani said in carefully pronounced English. "I am Silantha. I speak your language some. I learned from data files. Are you the ones who came from the stars to help us?" Sarah knelt down to bring herself closer to the young alien's eye level. "Yes, we are. I'm Commander Sarah Chun. We came as soon as we received your distress signal." Silantha's large, expressive eyes filled with what Sarah assumed were tears. "You came so far. Why? You do not know us." It was a question Sarah had been asking herself throughout the battle. Why had humanity risked 3 ships and hundreds of lives for a species they had never met? The answer wasn't simple, but it was fundamentally human. "Because it was the right thing to do," Sarah said simply. The elderly Zalani Silantha was supporting spoke up, his voice weak, but clear. "I am Elder Zethmar of the Western Groves. In our language, we have a word, Felaner. It means those who stand in the darkness so others may see the light. We thought such beings were only legend." Sarah felt a tightness in her throat. "We're not legends, Elder. We're just people who believe that innocent lives matter." "Your people fought the Vorth," Silantha said, her voice full of wonder. "The Vorth who conquered 12 systems. The Vorth who have never been defeated. You fought them with only 3 ships. We did what we had to do." Elder Zethmar studied Sarah's face with eyes that held centuries of accumulated wisdom. "Your species knows war, doesn't it? Not the conquest kind, but the survival kind." Sarah was surprised by the perceptiveness of the observation. "Yes, we do. It shows in how you fight. Like the wild storms that protect our forests, dangerous to enemies, but gentle to those who shelter beneath them." Before Sarah could respond, her communicator chirped. Commander, this is Captain Morrison on the Phoenix. We need you on the bridge. We've got incoming signals. Sarah stood, her expression becoming serious. More Vorth. No, ma'am. These are coming from deeper in their territory. Multiple sources, different species. I think word about what happened here is spreading. Sarah excused herself from the refugees and made her way to the Retribution's bridge. The main display showed a complex web of communication signals crossing space, all originating from worlds within Vorth territory. What are we looking at? She asked Lieutenant Hayes. Intercepted transmissions, ma'am. Our translation computers are working on them, but the pattern is clear. These are all species under Vorth control, and they're all asking the same questions. Which are, who are the humans? How many ships do they have? Are they coming to free other worlds? Commander Park looked up from his station. Ma'am, we're also detecting increased military activity in at least 6 Vorth systems. It looks like they're recalling fleets from occupied worlds. Sarah studied the tactical display, her mind racing through the implications. They're consolidating their forces. It gets more interesting, Park continued. Our long-range sensors are picking up what looks like civil unrest on several Vorth-controlled worlds. Species that have been conquered are starting to rebel. Captain Morrison's voice came over the intercom from the Phoenix. Commander, I think we may have kicked over a much bigger anthill than we realized. Sarah was beginning to understand the scope of what had happened. For 3 centuries, the Vorth Empire had been built on the assumption of their own invincibility. No one fought back. No one won. No one even tried, after the first few examples were made. But now, in a single battle, 3 human ships had destroyed more than half of Vorth fleet and forced them to retreat. That single action had shattered the myth of Vorth invincibility across their entire empire. Ma'am, incoming priority transmission from Earth Command, reported the communications officer. Admiral Harrison's face appeared on the main screen, his expression grim. Commander Chin, we've been monitoring your situation. Hell of a job driving off that Vorth fleet. Thank you, sir. But I think we may have bigger problems now. You mean the rebellion brewing across their empire? Yes, we've been tracking those signals too. It seems your little rescue mission has started something much larger. Sarah felt a weight settling on her shoulders. Sir, I need to ask about reinforcements. If this escalates. Already in motion, Harrison interrupted. I've got 12 ships en route to your position, with more to follow. But, Sarah, I need you to understand something. Earth's position has changed in the last 24 hours. How do you mean, sir? Your battle with the Vorth was monitored by at least 30 different species. Word is spreading that there's a new player in the galaxy, one that doesn't bow to the Vorth Empire. We're getting contact requests from species we've never heard of. The implications were staggering. Humanity had just announced their presence to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible, by humiliating the greatest military power anyone knew about. Sir, what are my orders? Continue the evacuation. Protect the Zalani. And prepare for the possibility that you're about to become the center of something much bigger than a rescue mission. The transmission ended, leaving Sarah alone with her thoughts. Through the bridge windows, she could see the wounded planet below, its cities still burning from the Vorth attack. But she could also see the medical shuttles moving back and forth between the surface and their ships, carrying survivors to safety. Commander, called Lieutenant Hayes. Dr. Vasquez is requesting your presence in Medical Bay 7. She says it's urgent. Sarah made her way through the ship's corridors, passing human crew members working alongside Zalani refugees. The cooperation between the species was remarkable. Language barriers were being overcome through universal gestures of kindness and shared work. She found Dr. Vasquez in one of the medical bays, standing beside a bed where an elderly Zalani lay connected to various monitoring devices. The alien's breathing was labored, and his pale green skin had taken on a grayish tinge that even Sarah could recognize as unhealthy. Commander, this is High Scholar Drenali, Elena said quietly. He's their equivalent of a chief historian and cultural leader. He's dying, but he insists on speaking with you. Sarah approached the bed carefully. The elderly Zalani's eyes opened as she drew near, and, despite his obvious pain, he managed a slight smile. Human Commander, he said in accented but clear English. I must thank you before I join my ancestors. You have given my people something precious. We just did what anyone should have done, Sarah replied. Drenali shook his head weakly. No, you have given us hope. For generations, we believed the galaxy was ruled by those who take and destroy. You have shown us there are also those who give and protect. He paused, gathering strength. But I must warn you, the Vorth Empire is vast and powerful. What you did here today will not go unanswered. They will come for you with everything they have. Sarah nodded grimly. We understand the risks. Do you? Drenali's eyes were sharp despite his weakness. The Empire controls over 300 systems. They have thousands of ships. When they move against you, it will be with the intent to make an example that will terrify the galaxy for centuries. Then, we'll have to make sure that doesn't happen. The Zalani scholar studied her face for a long moment. You truly believe you can stand against an empire that has conquered half the galaxy? Sarah thought about her answer carefully. It would be easy to give false reassurance, to downplay the magnitude of what they were facing. But this dying being deserved honesty. I don't know if we can win, she said finally. But I know we'll try. And I know we won't stand alone. Drenali's smile grew wider. Yes, that is the gift you have given the galaxy. You have shown that the Vorth can be beaten. Others will find courage in that knowledge. Sir, I need to ask you something. In your transmissions, you mentioned that the Vorth have been expanding for centuries. How many species have they conquered? 47 species completely absorbed into the Empire. Perhaps 100 more enslaved or destroyed. And every one of those conquests was accomplished the same way. Overwhelming force followed by systematic elimination of resistance. Sarah felt sick. Millions of worlds, trillions of beings, all crushed under the boot of a conquering empire that had never met real resistance. But now they have met you, Drenali continued, as if reading her thoughts. And you have shown the galaxy something wonderful and terrible. What's that? That predators can be prey. Dr. Vasquez moved to check the monitoring devices, her expression concerned. Commander, his vital signs are weakening. Drenali waved one of his hands dismissively. Do not mourn an old scholar, young healer. I have lived to see my people saved and my beliefs restored. That is more than most beings can ask for. He looked back at Sarah. Commander Chen, I have a request. In our archives, we have records of all the species the Vorth have conquered. Technologies, cultures, languages, everything we could preserve. Will you take these records with you? Of course, but why? Because when this war comes, and it will come, you will need allies. Those records will tell you where to find the species that remember freedom, the ones who might be willing to fight for it again. Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders once more. She had come here to rescue one species, and instead found herself being handed the keys to a potential galactic revolution. We'll take the records, she promised. And we'll make sure they're used wisely. Drenali closed his eyes, seeming to relax for the first time since Sarah had entered the room. Good. Then, perhaps the galaxy will remember this day not as the day the Vorth Empire was challenged, but as the day it began to fall. His breathing grew steady and peaceful. Dr. Vasquez checked her instruments and nodded to Sarah. The old scholar had slipped into what appeared to be a natural sleep, his vital signs stabilizing for the first time in hours. Will he survive? Sarah asked quietly. I think so. His species seems remarkably resilient. But, Commander, what he said about those archives. I know. We're not just rescuing refugees anymore. We're gathering intelligence for a war none of us wanted, but all of us are going to have to fight. Sarah's communicator chirped again. Commander, this is Morrison. You need to see this. She made her way back to the bridge, where Captain Morrison was waiting with a grim expression. The main display showed a tactical overview of known space, with new data points appearing constantly. What am I looking at? Rebellion, ma'am. In the 6 hours since our battle with the Vorth fleet, we've detected armed uprisings on 8 different worlds. Species that have been enslaved for decades are suddenly fighting back. Commander Park pointed to different areas of the map. The Caliph and the Rigel system have overrun 3 Vorth garrisons. The Nethkai have destroyed a Vorth orbital station. The Praxians have declared independence and are demanding Vorth withdrawal. Sarah stared at the display in amazement. All because of one battle. It's not just the battle, Morrison said. It's what the battle represented. For the first time in centuries, someone made the Vorth Empire retreat. Every enslaved species in the galaxy now knows it's possible. "Ma'am," called the communications officer. "We're receiving a priority transmission. Multiple sources, looks like a coordinated message." "Put it through." The main display flickered, then showed a collection of faces, aliens of different species, all looking directly into the camera with expressions of desperate hope. "People of Earth," the first speaker said in heavily accented Galactic standard. "We are the Free Species Coalition, representatives of 43 worlds under Vorth occupation. We have heard of your victory at the Zalani homeworld. We formally request alliance and mutual defense against the Vorth Empire." Sarah felt the last pieces of her old life falling away. 3 days ago, she had been a simple military commander protecting humanity's borders. Now she was apparently the de facto leader of a galactic rebellion against a 3-century-old empire. "Prepare a response," she told the communications officer. Then, she looked around at her bridge crew, humans who had signed up to explore space and ended up becoming the spark that would ignite a war across the galaxy. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said quietly, "I think we're about to make history." Emperor Vrakthas of the Vorth Empire stood before the massive holographic display in his war chamber, his clawed hands clenched behind his back as he studied the spreading chaos across his domain. Red markers indicated worlds in rebellion, yellow showed systems with significant unrest, and green represented his remaining secure territories. There was far too much red and yellow for his liking. "Report," he commanded, his voice carrying the authority of 3 centuries of absolute rule. Fleet Admiral Kestar, commander of the Empire's military forces, stepped forward with obvious reluctance. "Majesty, the situation continues to deteriorate. We now have active rebellions on 23 worlds, with unrest spreading to 47 more. All because of 3 ships," Vrakthas said quietly, his tone more dangerous than if he had shouted. 3 ships from a species we had never heard of." "Yes, Majesty." The Emperor turned away from the display, his dark eyes burning with fury. The Vorth Empire had been built on a simple principle: absolute dominance through superior force. For 3 centuries, no one had successfully resisted them. The mere threat of imperial retaliation had been enough to keep their conquered species in line. But now these humans had shattered that reputation with a single engagement, and the effects were spreading like wildfire across the galaxy. "What do we know about this Earth?" he asked. Admiral Kestar consulted his data pad. "Very little, Majesty. They appear to come from an unexplored region of the outer spiral. Our intelligence services had no previous contact with them. And their military capabilities? That's difficult to assess, Majesty. The engagement at Zalani Prime was unlike anything in our combat records. Their tactics were completely foreign to our experience." Vrakthas turned back to face his admiral. "Explain." "Our forces expected conventional warfare, large ships exchanging fire at long range until one side was destroyed or retreated. The humans fought like hunters, Majesty. They used speed and precision instead of overwhelming force. And they won." "Yes, Majesty." Warmaster Grexhai reports the loss of 23 ships to their 3. His remaining forces were forced to withdraw. The Emperor was quiet for a long moment, processing information that challenged everything he believed about warfare and imperial supremacy. In 3 centuries of conquest, no enemy had ever inflicted such casualties on an imperial fleet. "Where is Grexhai now?" "He has been relieved of command, Majesty. He currently awaits your judgment." "Bring him to me." Minutes later, the disgraced War Master was escorted into the war chamber. Grexhai had been stripped of his rank insignia, but he still carried himself with military bearing. He knelt before the Emperor's throne, his head bowed in submission. "War Master, former War Master, you have brought shame upon the Empire," Vrakthas said. "You allowed alien savages to defeat a superior Imperial fleet. You retreated when you should have fought to the death. Give me one reason why you should not be executed immediately." Grexhai raised his head, meeting the Emperor's gaze despite the danger. "Because I learned something about our enemies, Majesty. Something the Empire needs to understand if we are to defeat them." "Speak." "These humans are not like any species we have encountered. They do not fight for conquest or resources or territory. They fight because they believe fighting is necessary. And they are very, very good at it. The Emperor leaned forward in his throne. Elaborate. Majesty, in 30 years of commanding imperial fleets, I have faced every type of resistance. Some species fight out of desperation. Some fight for pride. Some fight for revenge. But the humans fight for something else entirely, which is, they fight for each other. And for species they don't even know. Grexhai paused, searching for words to explain something that had no equivalent in Vorth culture. They came 1,200 light years to defend beings they had never met, simply because those beings asked for help. Not for profit, not for strategic advantage, but because they believed it was the right thing to do. Emperor Rakthos stared at his former war master in confusion. That makes no sense. No species acts without self-interest. The humans do, Majesty. And that makes them incredibly dangerous. How? Because it means they will never surrender. Species that fight for territory will give up when the cost becomes too high. Species that fight for resources will negotiate when offered a better deal. But species that fight for principle, they fight until they win or they die. The Emperor considered this for a moment. Are you suggesting the Empire cannot defeat them? No, Majesty. I'm suggesting that defeating them will require different tactics than we have ever used. The humans fight like warriors, not soldiers. They adapt, improvise, and attack in ways we don't expect. Admiral Kestar stepped forward. Majesty, surely no single species, however skilled, can stand against the full might of the Empire. We have thousands of ships, millions of soldiers. Grexhai shook his head. Admiral, with respect, you're thinking like a Vorth. The humans don't need to defeat our entire fleet. They only need to keep winning long enough for the rest of the galaxy to believe they can be beaten. And they have already accomplished that, the Emperor said grimly. He turned back to the holographic display, where new red markers were appearing even as they watched. The rebellion spreads with every hour that passes. A communication officer hurried into the chamber, bowing hastily before speaking. Majesty, urgent transmission from the Caliph system. The rebels have captured our primary garrison and are broadcasting on all frequencies. What are they saying? They're calling for other enslaved species to rise up. They're saying the humans have proven the Empire can be defeated. Emperor Rakthos felt a cold rage building in his chest. 300 years of careful conquest and control unraveling because of 3 ships from a backwater system. Admiral, what forces do we have available for immediate deployment? The 2nd and 5th fleets are currently suppressing the rebellion in the Nethkai system. The 7th fleet is maintaining order in the core worlds. That leaves us with the 1st fleet, 60 ships of the finest vessels in the Imperial Navy. Not enough, Grexhai said quietly. The Emperor turned on him with fury. You dare suggest our finest fleet cannot handle 3 human ships? Majesty, you're still thinking conventionally. The humans won't face our fleet in open battle. They'll strike where we're weak, disappear before we can respond, and hit us again somewhere else. Meanwhile, every world they free will provide them with more allies, more resources, more support. Then, what do you suggest? Grexhai was quiet for a moment, clearly struggling with what he was about to say. We need to change our approach entirely, Majesty. For 3 centuries, we have ruled through fear. The humans have given our enemies hope. We need to destroy that hope completely. How? We make an example. Not of the humans. They're too well defended now, and attacking them directly will only validate their reputation. We make an example of their allies. Admiral Kestar frowned. What do you mean? The Zalani, Grexhai said simply. The species the humans saved. We return to their world with overwhelming force and destroy it completely. We broadcast the destruction across the galaxy with a simple message. This is what happens to anyone who accepts human help. The Emperor considered the proposal. It was brutal, even by Imperial standards, but it had strategic merit. And if the humans come to defend them again, then we'll be ready for them. Not 40 ships, 200. Not conventional tactics. New approaches designed specifically to counter their advantages. You're suggesting we sacrifice an entire species to trap 3 ships? I'm suggesting we sacrifice 1 world to save the Empire. Emperor Rakthos was quiet for several minutes, weighing the options. Around him, his advisors waited in tense silence. Finally, he He spoke. Admiral Kestar, begin assembling a fleet. 200 ships, including our newest and most advanced vessels. Grexhai, you will resume command and develop new tactical doctrines specifically for fighting the humans. Majesty, Admiral Kestar said hesitantly. A fleet of that size will strip our other territories of defense. If the humans strike elsewhere while we're committed, then we will lose those territories, the Emperor said coldly. But if we don't stop this rebellion now, we will lose the Empire. Meanwhile, 1,200 light-years away, Commander Sarachan stood in the observation deck of the Retribution, watching as the last of the Zalani refugees were transferred to the colony ships that had arrived from Earth. The evacuation was nearly complete, with over 50,000 survivors safely aboard human vessels. "Ma'am, we've got a problem," Commander Park said as he entered the observation deck. Sarah turned from the viewport. "What kind of problem?" "Long-range sensors are detecting a massive fleet buildup in Imperial space. Intelligence estimates 200 ships, possibly more." Sarah felt her stomach drop. "Headed where?" "Here. They're coming for the Zalani homeworld." "How long do we have?" 72 hours, maybe less." Sarah stared out at the Zalani world below them, still bearing the scars of the first attack. The Vorth weren't coming back to claim the planet. They were coming to destroy it completely, along with anyone brave enough to defend it. "Have we heard from the Free Species Coalition?" "Yes, ma'am. They're sending what ships they can, but most of their forces are tied up defending their own worlds from Imperial retaliation. We might have 30 Allied vessels, at best. 30 ships plus her small human fleet against 200 Imperial warships." The mathematics were brutal, but Sarah had learned not to trust mathematics when human lives were at stake. "What about reinforcements from Earth?" "Admiral Harrison's fleet won't arrive for another week. We're on our own." Sarah nodded, her mind already working through possibilities. They couldn't win a conventional battle against those odds, but humans had never been particularly conventional. "Contact Captain Morrison and Dr. Vasquez. Emergency command meeting in 1 hour. And send a message to the coalition forces. Tell them if they're coming to help, they need to get here fast." As Park left to carry out her orders, Sarah remained at the viewport, looking down at the world they had fought so hard to save. In 72 hours, the largest fleet in Imperial history would arrive with the intention of destroying everything below. The Vorth Empire was about to learn the most dangerous lesson in human military history. Never threaten something a human has decided to protect. Because that's when the mathematics stopped matching, and the impossible became inevitable. The real war was about to begin. The Allied fleet assembled in the shadow of the Zalani homeworld was a sight that would have been impossible just weeks before. 37 ships from 12 different species, all united by a single shared goal, standing against the Vorth Empire. Commander Sarah Chun floated weightless in the communication chamber of the Retribution, surrounded by holographic displays showing the faces of Allied commanders. Each species was different. The crystalline Nethkai, the insectoid Praxians, the flowing energy beings called the Veltar, but all wore the same expression of grim determination. "The Imperial fleet will arrive in 18 hours, she said, addressing the gathering. "Current intelligence indicates 200 ships, including their newest dreadnoughts. They're not coming to conquer this time. They're coming to make an example." Captain Zethmar of the Nethkai crystal ships spoke first, her voice like wind chimes. "Commander Chun, my people appreciate what humanity has done for the galaxy. But we must face reality. 37 ships against 200. These are not winning odds." "With respect, Captain," Sarah replied, "humans have a saying, it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog." "What does this mean?" asked Commander Vexhai of the Praxian Hive Fleet, his multifaceted eyes reflecting confusion. Sarah smiled grimly. "It means we're not going to fight them the way they expect." On the tactical display, she began outlining her plan. The Vorth expect a conventional battle, 2 fleets meeting in open space, exchanging fire until one side is destroyed. That's how they've fought every war for 3 centuries. But we're not going to give them that battle. Captain Morrison's image leaned forward from the Phoenix. "What are you proposing?" "We're going to make them fight our kind of war. Fast, brutal, and personal." Sarah manipulated the display, showing the planned positions of each Allied ship. The Imperial fleet will arrive expecting to find us in defensive formation around the planet. Instead, they'll find empty space. Where will we be? Asked Captain Silneth of the Veltar energy ships. Everywhere and nowhere. We're going to split into hunter-killer groups and attack them from every direction simultaneously. Hit them hard, disappear, hit them again somewhere else. The alien commanders exchanged glances, clearly uncertain about the unorthodox tactics. It was Commander Velkan of the Calith Resistance Fleet who spoke the concern they all felt. Commander Chun, this strategy requires precise coordination and perfect timing. Our species have never fought together before. Our ships use different technologies, different communication systems. How can we possibly coordinate such complex maneuvers? Because we're going to do something the Vorth have never encountered, Sarah said. We're going to trust each other. For the next 16 hours, the Allied fleet trained together with desperate intensity. Human tactical officers were deployed to each Allied ship, while alien specialists shared their unique technologies with the human vessels. Language barriers dissolved under the pressure of necessity, replaced by a growing sense of unity. Dr. Vasquez worked with Zilani biologists to develop new medical protocols for treating wounded from multiple species. The Nethkai shared their crystal-based shielding technology, while the Praxians contributed their swarm-fighting techniques. The Veltar showed the others how to phase in and out of normal space for hit and run attacks. But it was the arrival of an unexpected ally that gave Sarah real hope. Commander, we're detecting ships emerging from hyperspace, reported Lieutenant Hayes. Configuration unknown, but they're broadcasting coalition identification codes. Sarah hurried to the bridge, where the main display showed 12 massive vessels unlike anything she had ever seen. They were clearly ancient, their hulls bearing the scars of countless battles, but they radiated an aura of deadly competence. This is War Master Thekmar of the Last Fleet, came a voice over the communications system. The speaker's image appeared on screen, a being that looked like a cross between a bear and a dragon, with intelligent eyes that held the weight of centuries. We have come to stand with the species that remembers how to fight for others. The Last Fleet, Sarah asked. The final remnants of the Kethmoran Empire, destroyed by the Vorth 200 years ago. We have been waiting ever since for someone to give us a chance to strike back. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. These weren't just allies. They were ghosts of a dead civilization, carrying 2 centuries of accumulated rage and tactical knowledge. War Master, we welcome any help you can provide. We bring more than help, Human Commander. We bring the knowledge of how the Vorth truly fight when they're desperate, and they will be desperate before this battle is over. The combined fleet now numbered 49 ships, still massively outnumbered, but carrying something the Imperial fleet lacked, the absolute conviction that they were fighting for the right cause. All ships, take your positions, Sarah ordered. Remember, we don't need to destroy their entire fleet. We just need to break their will to fight. The Allied vessels scattered throughout the system, taking up positions among asteroids, behind moons, and in the shadow of gas giant rings. To anyone approaching the system, it would appear that the defenders had fled. The Vorth Imperial fleet arrived exactly on schedule, 200 ships emerging from hyperspace in perfect formation. At their head was the dreadnought Eternal Conquest, flagship of the reformed War Master Grexhai. All ships, assume attack formation. Grexhai commanded from his bridge. Begin systematic bombardment of the planet. I want nothing left alive down there. But, as the Imperial ships moved toward their target, space around them suddenly filled with enemy vessels. The Allied fleet struck from every direction simultaneously, ships emerging from behind asteroids, phasing into normal space, rising from the shadow of planets. The first wave hit the Vorth formation like a hammer blow. Praxian swarm ships tore through their rear guard while Nethkai crystal vessels punched holes in their flanks with focused energy beams. The ancient ships of the Last Fleet struck with weapons technology the Vorth had thought extinct, their forgotten beam weapons carving through Imperial armor like it was paper. All ships, return fire, Grexhai ordered, but his fleet was already in chaos. The coordinated formation that was the basis of Imperial tactics had been shattered in the first 30 seconds of battle. The Phoenix materialized beside an Imperial destroyer, its kinetic weapons sending the larger ship spinning out of control before vanishing again into the void. The Sanctuary, officially a medical vessel, revealed hidden weapons systems as it led a squadron of Zalani organic ships in a devastating flanking attack. "Sir, we can't get a lock on them," reported the Eternal Conquest's tactical officer. "They're not fighting like any species we've encountered." Because they're not one species, Grexhai realized with growing horror. They're all of them. Fighting is one. The battle raged across the system, but it wasn't the conventional engagement the Imperial fleet had expected. Instead of two forces grinding against each other until one broke, it was a dozen separate fights happening simultaneously, with the Allied forces striking and fading like ghosts. "Sir, we've lost 30 ships in the first hour," reported another officer. 30 ships. Grexhai stared at the tactical display in disbelief. His fleet was being dismantled by an enemy that refused to stand still long enough to be properly targeted. "Signal the reserve squadrons to move in close support," he ordered. But, as the Imperial ships consolidated their formation, the Allied fleet adapted. The Veltar energy beings taught the others to phase partially out of normal space, making them nearly impossible to target with conventional weapons. The Kethmoran Last Fleet shared their knowledge of Imperial weak points, gained through 2 centuries of planning revenge. And, through it all, the human ships moved like wolves among the Imperial formation, striking with precision and disappearing before retaliation could arrive. "Sir, the human commander is hailing us," reported the communications officer. Grexhai almost didn't want to take the call, but protocol demanded it. Commander Chen's face appeared on his screen, and, despite the chaos of battle around them, she looked completely calm. "War Master Grexhai," she said pleasantly. "You came back." "I came to finish what should have been finished the first time," Grexhai replied. "With 200 ships. That's flattering. It's practical. This time, you won't escape." Chen smiled, and something in that expression made Grexhai's blood run cold. "War Master, you still don't understand what you're fighting. I'm fighting aliens and rebels. No, you're fighting an idea. The idea that people have the right to be free. And you can't kill an idea with warships." As if to prove her point, another squadron of Imperial ships was overwhelmed by a coordinated attack from 3 different species, their weapons systems complementing each other perfectly despite being based on completely different technologies. "Sir," called the tactical officer, "we're receiving reports of uprisings on 17 worlds in the core systems. The rebels are saying we're losing the battle here." Grexhai felt the foundations of his understanding crumbling. How are they getting real-time battle reports? "The Veltar ships are broadcasting everything across their energy network," Chen's voice said from the communications system. "Every species in the galaxy is watching this battle, watching the mighty Vorth Empire struggle against a handful of rebels." Grexhai looked at his tactical display. After 2 hours of fighting, he had lost nearly 60 ships. The Allied fleet had taken casualties too, but they kept fighting with a ferocity that defied logic. "This is impossible," he muttered. "Nothing's impossible," Chen replied. "You just have to want it badly enough." Another wave of coordinated attacks struck the Imperial fleet. The ancient weapons of the last fleet had been joined by human kinetic cannons, Praxian swarm missiles, and Nethkai crystal beams. Each attack was precisely timed to exploit the weaknesses created by the others. "Sir, Admiral Kestar is requesting permission to withdraw," reported the communications officer. Grexhai stared at the display. "Withdraw. Retreat. Again. From an enemy that shouldn't have been able to stand against Imperial might for 5 minutes, let alone 5 hours. But what choice did he have? He was losing ships faster than he could count, and the enemy showed no signs of slowing down. "All ships," he said quietly, "prepare to withdraw from the system." "War Master," Chen's voice came over the speakers again. "Before you go, there's something I want you to understand." "What?" This wasn't about one planet or one species. This was about proving something to the galaxy. "Today, you helped us prove that the Empire can be beaten, that bullies can be stopped, that innocent people don't have to live in fear anymore." Grexhai said nothing. What was there to say? "The word is already spreading," Chen continued. "Every oppressed world in Imperial space now knows that resistance is possible, that freedom is achievable. You didn't just lose a battle today, War Master. You lost the fear that held your empire together. The Imperial fleet limped away from the Zilani system, leaving behind 73 destroyed ships and the shattered myth of their own invincibility. Behind them, the Allied fleet watched them go, battered but victorious. On the bridge of the Retribution, Commander Sarah Chun stood surrounded by her crew, looking out at the stars. In the space of a few weeks, she had gone from a simple military officer to the catalyst for a galactic revolution. "Ma'am," Commander Park said quietly, "we're receiving surrender requests from 8 Imperial worlds. They want to join the Free Species Coalition. And we're detecting massive fleet movements from Earth," added Captain Morrison over the intercom. "Admiral Harrison is bringing half the defense forces to support the rebellion." Sarah nodded, but her attention was focused on the planet below them. The Zilani homeworld was healing, its people free to rebuild their civilization without fear. That single world, and the desperate message it had sent across the void, had become the spark that ignited the largest rebellion in galactic history. "Commander," called Dr. Vasquez from the medical bay, "Elder Zethmar would like to speak with you." Sarah made her way to the medical bay, where the elderly Zilani was sitting up in bed, looking much stronger than he had just days before. His eyes were bright with hope and gratitude. "Commander Chun," he said in his careful English, "my people have a tradition. When someone saves our lives, we plant a tree in their honor. The tree grows and spreads, giving life to new forests." He gestured toward the viewport, where the fleet of liberated worlds was visible against the stars. "I think you have planted such a tree today, and this forest will spread across the galaxy." Sarah looked out at the Allied ships, human vessels alongside alien craft that just weeks ago had been enemies of each other, now united in the cause of freedom. "We all planted it together, Elder," she said. "And you're right. This is just the beginning." Across the galaxy, the word was spreading. The Vorth Empire could be beaten. Freedom was possible. And somewhere in the far reaches of space, a species called humanity had proven that sometimes the best way to defend your home was to defend someone else's. The rebellion had begun, and it would not be stopped.